Like, woo! Yeah, you have nothing here. Don't tell her. That's what I didn't hear. They're on the end. Yeah. So, that's what she told me. Hey, you all win again. Mhm. Sonny, you can go to the table of contacts and then press the page number, like for your department, and it'll take you to it too. What were you saying about your neighbors? Live across the street from them. That's fine. My bedroom's in the back. I don't care.
All right, good evening, everyone. I think we have the full complement of members of the committee, both in person and participating remotely, and it seems like we have everyone else represented tonight who would need to be here. So I'll call this meeting of the Budget Committee to order. Ms. Donaldson, a roll call, please.
Fitzwater. Hensley.
Present.
Present.
Kimna.
Present.
Here.
Lester.
Here.
Schreiber. Spencer.
Here.
Spicer.
Present.
Vogt. Ward. Here. Wiseman.
Present.
Very much. And tonight's meeting will be sort of the first of two department presentation meetings. And we're just going to go mainly in order of how the budgets are presented in our binders, except that tonight we're going to begin with Mr. Marash, and then we'll have the mayor council budget. Will that be, who's going to present the mayor council budget? Okay. And then the city clerk's budget, and the city administrator's budget, and the city attorney's budget, the municipal court budget. Mr. Molman, will you be doing the uni court budget also?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. The human resources budget, the finance, non-departmental, and IT budgets, and then the police budget, and the fire budget. And that is what we hope to get through this evening. Are there any introductory comments from staff before we get rolling? Nope. Okay. Mr. Marash, the
Thank you.
floor is yours, sir.
And I passed out a copy of this quick, just a very high-level PowerPoint of each of our budgets at your tabletop, but I also have it on the screen for you to look up there. But what I've done in the past is just kind of very high-level, go over each of the divisional budgets in Public Works. We have 10 of those budgets, 3 of those are in wastewater. And what I do is kind of just compare this year's budget to 2 budgets ago, because that's the audited budget, the 2020 actual budget, just to kind of see if it's flat or if it's went up for some reason. If it has, I've added in the slide, but and then just kind of try to highlight, what's the majority of each of those budgets and some goals for the next budget year. So first slide right there shows the 10 various budgets we'll talk about. Public Works has over 120 employees. I didn't be exact about it, but it's in the position control. It's actually like, I think 106 or 8 something. But anyway, and then we have over $20 million of the budget to implement, including capital funds. But that goes up and down a lot depending on what kind of projects we're doing, things like that. So that could be over 30 easily if we do a big wastewater project, for example. But anyway, go on to the first one in the order of the book, and at the top I put what pages I'm on. So central maintenance is the first Public Works budget. It's on page 240, begins on page 247. But as you can see there, basically a flat budget from compared to 2 years ago. And the 2 of the biggest items in this budget are basically personnel and parts. And so that makes up 95% of the budget. And so parts is the kind of unknown of this budget, where the, did I get the pages right for people flipping around? I'm using the page numbers on my iPad, so. But anyway, so the parts is obviously the unknown, and that includes parts for all various departments, whether it's a police car, fire truck, bus, et cetera, et cetera. Well, not a bus because that's paid for out of a different account, but, Public Works engineering, vehicle maintenance, things like that, street maintenance, whatever. And so, basically, if you look at the goal, we're maintaining an older fleet, and we have been for many years. So that's more maintenance, more parts. So you can kind of watch that budget over time, and it will accelerate. And so you don't know what's going to break down until it does, and we have to get it back on the road if it's an important piece of our workflow. And best example, one time we had to park some street sweepers. Well, likes that. So we had to come back to the council and say, these are beyond really repair at this point. And do you want us to do this task? And we might have to get a supplemental or something like that to actually buy a vehicle or something. Now, the other thing that I would say about central maintenance in our equipment right now, even if we ordered a vehicle, sometimes they're going to be hard to get, just like your passenger vehicles and every other thing. So we're all in that predicament, not just the city of Jefferson. So, and then some other items to note here, what we're working on. I'll go over this in the transit budget as well. But basically, transit has been working with a grant through Campo to look at our facilities, and that includes central maintenance is located right below the transit office space. And so we're looking at, long-term where that facility can be located. Does central maintenance need separated from transit, et cetera? And then once we have that plan in place, we feel like there's good opportunity to get grants to replace those facilities. And that's how the original facility was built in the 80s, was with transit funds through grants. One thing I do want to note, though, last year, you might remember all of our, I'll call them our passenger fleet, all the trucks out back here, some other trucks that our supervisors use in the field. Those were all upgraded in 2021. So we were lucky to get those in before the shortages really occurred. And so that's a big accomplishment for many people in this room, obviously, all of us, but that will also help with central maintenance in the end, so they're not maintaining those older passenger vehicles, any parts on those, et cetera. So just wanted to point that out. Area. So question, I'd be glad to answer.
Any questions at this point? No.
Next budget is the administration budget, and that's on page 2, starts on page 255. So basically, administration includes myself and a couple administrative folks downstairs in this building, but basically that's all personnel with the exception of gas. I highlighted in red there, or fuel, I should have said, for our vehicles in public works. And so just to keep track of it, we put it all in administration, whether it's a street department fuel or engineering gas in their vehicles or whatever, and track it in one place so we know how much money we're spending. We did forecast an increase this year. And so really, when you look at actual 20 versus 2022 budget this year, the biggest majority of that increase is just in the fuel. We anticipate a fuel hike coming. Britt Smith is here, and he does a little voodoo math, I'll call it, by looking at a bunch of various prediction websites and tries to come up with it the best he can, put that number in various budgets. So that's how that was arrived at. The no pink sheets for this department. Occasionally might have a large printer or something that's very expensive, or a copy or something, but right now I think we're okay on that. And really just the overarching goals that we do for our department is, working with our staff, and we moniker of our core mission and values to say, we're trying to promote high customer service outcomes. So, and just working with our staff to ensure that obviously we have all those 120 people going about town, having interactions with the public, probably at their house or in their yard. And so, we may not give the best answer they would desire, but we try to do it in a way that people can appreciate at least. And then again, the COVID thing is always fresh on our minds, especially as of late. We thought we kind of got past that a little bit, and here we are back, and we're having some of those outbreaks here and there. I wouldn't say outbreak, I shouldn't have said that, but we have a few people out with COVID. And so, we're just trying to encourage and protect against that so we can keep providing the services we do. You might remember last year we had to shut the bus service down for about 2.5, 3 days as of COVID outbreak in that. So once it gets in your work group like that and spreads around, if you go down enough people, then you just got to shut it down. So we're trying to avoid that. Questions on this budget? Next one, book. It's on engineering, so starts on page 260. And essentially all these folks sit right downstairs as well. You probably interact with some of these folks on a regular basis, various committees, but basically if you look at it, the total budget went up about 3.4% since 2020, and 97% of that budget, as you can imagine, is personnel. No pink sheets. We occasionally need a large format printer or copy or something like that. For these guys that you might see a pink sheet on, or more different computers or something like that, But generally with a passenger fleet upgrade, that's taking care of the pink sheets for this. And so basically the goals are basically what these folks do day in, day out. We're trying to implement the CIP funds. We have development oversight, whether that's reviewing plans or inspection, and then construction inspection of both developer projects as well as city CIP projects, and then of course stormwater compliance and all the various folks that we work with on the stormwater front. The goal, obviously, we're coming up on the end of a current sales tax, so we try to get most of that closed out as quick as we can. Obviously, there'll be some holdover as we implement the final projects, but presumably we'll hopefully be starting a new 5-year sales tax project list in engineering. So looking forward to that. Happy to answer any questions here as well. Not, got street and stormwater. Page 265 is where that budget starts. So this one's one of our larger budgets in Public Works. So you look right there and I just try to compare again. This budget actually went down, but if you remember from the mayor's comments about materials for stormwater being taken out of the budget, that's really the difference in the decrease from the 2022 to 20 budget. And I believe the thought would be to try to take those stormwater material monies out of a different pool of funds. Some of the, I just refer to them as COVID funds, but you know, whatever the acronym is we're using for the various ones. And if you were to look in the budget, personnel is obviously almost 2 million of that, 3.2 million, but chemicals, that's another variable number, but we have 300 in there now. That's salt for road salt. And so we try to fill our bins up in the spring, and then we have 300 for what we call the average year tonnage that we might use. Sometimes we get lucky, we don't use it all. Sometimes we use more. Then the material budget, that's another big hunk of money in that budget. But this year it's been reduced by a couple $100,000, but normally it's around 400,000-ish. And that's basically to buy concrete, rock, whatever we need, pipe for stormwater inlets, things that are stormwater pipes, et cetera. And then, so that's that big hunk of money. Then you have streetlights. If it's listed under streetlights, that is basically paying the Ameren UE bill for all these streetlights all over town that we don't own. We lease those from Ameren. They're in all the subdivisions pretty much. Unless they're like a downtown light that looks like the little acorn light or a shoebox light you might see out here, we typically would own those. And so our signal techs maintain those and upgrade them, things like that, change out the bulbs. But the ones in subdivisions are released and that payment includes the maintenance, et cetera. Now, I often get a call, hey, my street light's out. We try to get a number or a location. We forward that to Ameren, they'll come out and take care of it. That's what that number's for. And if you look at all that, that's 93% of the whole budget. It's right there, as you can imagine. Doesn't include capital, of course. That's just those things in the operation of the budget. In the pink sheet wise, I think this was based on the material shift in materials money. We were able to get a couple one-ton trucks and the 12,000 light replacement, which I bungled last on the question last meeting. That's basically some of the shoebox lights still need upgraded LED lights, and they're on McCarty, they're on Main Street. I think even the ones, a few of them out by on Mission Drive are in there. So that would be our staff upgrading those lights to LED. Some of the unfunded things, we have a standby pay plan in this budget. Basically, that's we have somebody on call around the clock, 7 days a week. And that has not been upgraded in many, many years, I think from the 80s, and I got more detail. But then also, I would also note that this year we took a little different tack. We went ahead and really reviewed our equipment. I had Britt look at that, and if we have useful lives assigned to things like maybe a snowplow truck has to last for 12 years, 12 years. And beyond that, you know, it's getting pretty worn. So we just decided to put all of those in the budget so you kind of know the issue we're having. So that's all the equipment that's past its expected useful life. So what happens is, you know, Oftentimes we talk about first responders and things like that. Well, in disasters and stuff, that's where this equipment comes in, where it's a snow or an ice storm or a tornado or et cetera, or a flood. We're using this equipment now. If it goes down, yes, we have mechanics to repair it, but it's not in use. And so we have to wait on it. And so that can be an issue in big snows, heavy snows with really cold weather, things like that. So anyway, we go into much detail about that if you'd like, but it's all in the budget there. You can see the various years on the trucks if you look at sheets in there. So we're glad for the couple 1-ton trucks there. And then just on the goals wise, certainly we know we have to repair. There's a lot of concrete streets that still need repair. We've been working on those really hard for the last couple of years. Same with stormwater repairs. 2016, the council added another 3-person crew just to the street department to focus on stormwater. That doesn't just mean we use 3 people. You still use multiple crews on stormwater, but we always have at least 3 people working on stormwater as a small crew. Of course, then, just trying to maintain our equipment that's aging. And we also have recently discovered an issue down at 900 Miller Street, which is down here by the transit facilities. Actually, one of the firemen pointed it out to us one day as well. Our bricks are kind of leaning on our old street building where we store equipment and things like that. So we're in the middle of evaluating that. So that's a newer thing that's come up. But those facilities are obviously pretty aged down there. They're pretty ragged in some cases. So we're going to have to be talking about that this next year as well. That's kind of the street budget. Be happy to answer any questions if there are.
So I noticed that the street materials is a lot less.
Yeah.
Explain that.
Yeah, that goes back to the mayor in her budget shifted. We were able to shift some of those material monies for stormwater to the, is it ARA funds?
ARPA.
I keep saying COVID funds, ARPA funds. One of those pools of money, so we were able to reduce that for this year. I think it's more or less until those funds are fully decided on.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, I think we just wanted to break out stormwater, so we just added that line and, funded what ordinarily some of that stormwater money would have been in those materials, so we just broke it out. So it's essentially the same amount of money.
Regarding your number 1 priority pink sheet, is that full-time or part-time? 3 full-time or part-time positions?
Matt, I can.
Yeah, it's just an on-call issue.
On-call.
And I'll let Britt explain it. We've had talked to Public Works Committee about it in the past.
All right. What we do is every day, every night, we have one employee who's carrying a pager, and they maintain a steady state of readiness the entire evening, including taking the city vehicle home. Which means if, their families go someplace, they're going separately or not going at all, because they're ready to respond should the communications call them out. So currently they're being paid $8 per day to carry that pager during a weekday and $20 per day on a weekend. That's the same dollar amount that has been my entire career, well over 20 years. I can't speak before that because I just don't know. I don't think it's been changed since it was instituted. We would request that dollar amount be increased to be more in line with maybe at least 1 hour's pay, for a street worker during the weekday and 2.5 times that on a weekend. For the street department, that equates to a little over $4,000 extra a year. And then it would also be, if it was tied to some sort of hourly wage, as wages increase, we don't have to try to reassess this 20 years from now to get it, to get it current.
I would also add on that, you'll see the same thing occur not only in street budget, but we have two of those in the wastewater budget. And then same deal. See it change in those 3 locations. Airport.
Public Works maintains one, Public Works general revenue maintains one. The airport does not have one. Parking does not have one. It's simply the street department, wastewater collections, and wastewater plant that we are aware of. I'm not sure if there's any other departments using this, but I'm not aware of any.
Councilman Kemna.
Yeah, I don't know how often.
It might be 3 times a night, or it might not be at any of that week. It really depends on what's going on, and what calls. When there's a storm, they're pretty much in all night long. Whenever there's, otherwise it's, if there's an accident and we have a knockdown of a street sign or run off the road, they'll come in for that, those kind of things. It is very random, but it's pretty much at least once a week.
Yeah, and example, one time they accidentally called me instead of the pager number, but middle of the night, it was, a police officer noted a parked utility trailer. It was in the street. It was legally parked. It's just that he came upon it and you just couldn't see it. I don't know if it had headlights or it was dirty. He was asking that, hey, somebody from streets come out and kind of block it off, somebody run. So that manhole covers off or whatever, and somebody storm got it. Just randomly, just various things that occur. And usually the police will find a lot of these things, or branch or debris in the road. They'll call into dispatch and they'll dispatch the various workers. Now that street, wastewater is a little different. We have folks that maintain these pump stations in the plant, so they'll, something goes down, it'll alert them and they'll have to come in and check it immediately. Collection side, smell sewer in their backyard that evening, call in, hey, some problem, they'll come out and look at that. See if we have to respond that night or can it wait till the next day and bring the whole crew. Hopefully we try to make it where we can just make it safe. Wait for the next shift to come in.
Okay. Any other questions on streets? Councilman Spencer.
So, we have had issues with stormwater events here within the last 2 months. What do you think would be an adequate figure to actually fund stormwater?
Well, in the past, we've done an exercise on a stormwater utility, which would look much like wastewater. So that's charging a fee, $5 a month on your water bill, like you get your sewer bill. Where your sewer bill is charged. That we feel like would be an adequate amount. Which, I think it generates, say-ish. It's been a while since I looked at it. That's kind of a level that would do a good, solid job similar to wastewater. So anywhere in between what we have now and there.
Is that $3 million annually?
I believe so, and I could be way off. I'm trying to do the math in my head real quick. I think it's 3 to 3.
Do you think you have the staffing
No,
right
that
now?
would have to, that would include staffing, some of that. There's a whole menu of things there, whether it would increase, just like it'd be very similar to wastewater. Probably would combine it either with wastewater or keep it in streets for economy of scale, for supervision, things like that. But, include some bid projects in that number. You would some more additional staff to do more projects, have material monies, et cetera. And then also just replace the money we're spending on it now, obviously.
Is there a sense of how much total it would take to bring our entire stormwater network, so to speak, up to a level that we're comfortable with?
Yeah, in these studies, and I can definitely get those back out and dust them off, because this would probably to that issue that twice since I've worked here, so it's pretty easy to find on my shelf. So one time we paid Burns and McDonald to do it. We reviewed it, tweaked it ourselves a little bit, presented it. I believe, I want to say around 2012, we did it again, just internally, but it was based on the same methodology, not the same numbers. So
Okay,
I definitely could give everybody a summary of that.
be helpful.
We had it, I believe, on the council agenda to vote, to put it to a vote of the people. That was in 16, that's when it was. And then that's why they decided not to do that. Council at the time instituted a 3-person crew help with the situation.
Councilman Kemna?
Bert could help me on this, but you know, basically, when we look at that money, the material money, so normally it's around $400-ish thousand, but that's street and stormwater material monies. And I think we said, well, it's about half probably, because if you think about it, the stormwater system is very tied to the street. Street conveys the water to the stormwater system, so you know, whether you're building a new piece of curb to get it there more efficiently or whatever. It depends how you kind of view it, but that is just that money. And I actually have a sheet of this. I've been supposed to handwritten still, but and then of course our capital improvement sales tax money has money in it for stormwater. Right now, in this 5 years, we're spending, you know, it just averages. If you divide the total number by 5, in our current one, we're spending $360,000 a year in capital monies on stormwater. The new sales tax, should it pass, hopefully, would be we have it slotted for $464,000 a year for stormwater money. So I say per year just to break it down, but reality kind of depends on our workflow. 1 year we might do $1 million, the next year, a couple $100,000, you know, it just varies. To the end, we want to spend that amount of money.
Any other questions on streets? Great. I'm sure there will be more question and discussion on streets in future meetings, but we can go ahead and move on now.
The next one's airport, so it's on page 296 to 306. Basically, an airport decrease in the 22 budget, but most of that can be attributed to the feds taking over our tower for us, so that decreased our expenses with office and things like that. Utilities to about $98,000, so that's essentially the decrease through those budgets. Here we have 3 staff people that run the airport, 2 maintenance fellows and manager. But so I just kind of give you a feel for subsidies, et cetera. But if you look at the revenue, we generate about 180,000. And so what happens is on that, we lease sites to people who have hangar space, so that those are on leased properties. So we generate income there. We generate fuel sales. We generate some funds there. And then the farm income, we call it that. Basically, a lot of the land surrounding the airport is a runway protection zone, so you can't really do anything with it, but we lease it to farmers and generate some money that way. And then, so that's how we generate some of those funds at the airport. The general fund subsidy is listed at 113,000, but if you within our budget, there's also a payback from the airport of almost 50,000 back to the general, and so that's that admin charge. So kind of the net subsidy I'd look at about a little over $63,000. But so that's just kind of a brief overview of the budget of the airport. Pink sheet wise, so we have a snowplow truck in there, and also this crew leader position. So we have 2 maintenance staff, and Britt can go into this a little more detail, but like one of them to kind of be the crew leader and charge of the group instead of kind of co-equals there. And that's really how it functions, just the person hasn't been paid for that. So we like to see that happen. Goal for next year, this coming year, is we want to pursue grants for taxi improvements and also our tower replacement, which we've talked about for a long time. Most of that, if not all of it, is very grant eligible. Any questions?
Seeing none?
Moving. Parking then, 307 to 315 pages. So anyway, on this one, I would point out that there are no subsidies back to are coming out of the general fund to support parking. It's self-supporting. And the 2-year budget look, it's about equal, about 2% difference is all. But you know, some of these you go, well, how can it be 2% if we gave a raise and this and that? Well, a lot of that is, you know, we'll have staff turnover. Maybe the next person doesn't make quite as much money as the person that had been there a long time or something like that. It just varies. And so I try to take capital out of that to just give a look at the operation budget. But half of this budget is personnel. That's our big chunk in there. And that stands to reason. We have a lot of equipment to mow lots and maintain them. We might upgrade the meters, and all that stuff is in there, whether it's a meter on the street or new asphalt for the parking lot, et cetera, comes out of this fund. Just to point out also, our current revenue stream exceeds the budget. I think our prediction for this year is about 250,000 back to the fund balance, which sets around 5.5 million is estimated for next year. And similar to airport, we would like a crew leader position here to kind of for our maintenance staff to be that crew leader. Of course, the goal for 2022 is looking at our existing garage and making those evaluations and hopefully get some repairs going there.
Questions on parking? Going once? But
Okay, transit. 2 more sheets, so bear with. Page 316. So, looking at the budget, about a 3% difference here, based on 2-year look back. Subsidy this year, as I think Margie's already pointed out, Steve, the first night, but $187,000 from the general fund. Typically, that's up over $1 million if you do look back several years. Put into there between 800 to it's went up to 1.2 million, I think, in the out years. But obviously, through COVID and getting these grants to work with, we've reduced that down to the 187. I would point out that there is an administrative charge in all these funds, and this particular one is like 250. So really, this year anyway, back that charge. Hopefully, you got that right, Marge. So that's good for the general fund this year anyway, but again, that's temporary based on these funds coming out for the COVID issue. Personnel is about 60% of that budget. Stands to reason they burn a lot of fuel and a lot of maintenance on the buses. Our revenue that we generate just by having this program, if you look at it, fares, just your regular fares that the everyday person would pay, generate a little money through advertising, but that's about 200,000 in the budget. And then we do generate money through this medical and non-emergency medical transport, things like that. Charge back through the state. We get a little higher rate of return there on our fare. And so that's about 245. You look in our so overall, a little over 450,000 ish generate. The pink sheets, we typically do this through grants. We get a lot of federal grants, obviously. So we don't typically put them in here. We apply as a city, we're allotted a certain amount of money through a lot of these grant pools, and that will replace our handy wheels buses and eventually our large buses. They're very expensive. They are at the end of their useful life. They look pretty good, but they've got a lot of years on them. I think most of them are 05, but they're made to run a long time, but we are at the handy wheels buses. They are at the end of their useful life as well, most of them. However, we've been trying to order them through our grants, but MoDOT has not got the contract in place so that we can do that. So my mechanics fuss at me a little bit. Hey, you need to get the bus replaced because we're working on it all the time. And so they do get a lot of wear in parking lots, starting and stopping. Smaller buses. But so the goal for 2022, one thing that we were talking about these budgets, this is an internal thing, but just maintenance of our staffing, our wages compared to this, we might look at the school bus company and places where we get workers. We have kind of a razor thin margin there. 12-hour shift basically to work with the one shift of people. So people end up taking long breaks in the middle of the day, 3-hour lunch break one day. So it's not a time is not your own. You're almost working 6 to 6 or on call 6 to 6, but you get these long breaks just because of the way we operate. We don't have enough time we're operating to run two full shifts, that would cost a lot more money. That's another problem with extending the hours, but, and we have an older workforce there as well, so it's something to be thinking of, when we're thinking about wages and things like that. On the transit facilities, we're working with Campo here, Sonny's group, on a study to look at that. I mentioned this earlier, look at the facilities, and it's in line to pursue grant opportunities. So as you hear about transportation bills being looked at right now, it does have a pretty big pool of transit. So this would be as good as opportunity as probably since the 80s to place some of these facilities that are. Any questions?
Councilman Spencer.
Just a question as far as the buses, since we do take the federal funds to fund that program, do they dictate the types of buses that we have to run in our community? And
Not necessarily dictate, but, there is a lot of grant money in them. So when we do go to a place, this has been a big topic. Britt and I have actually went to some bus shows, if you will, recently over in Minneapolis. Recently, 5 years ago, probably. But, we looked at everything from electric buses to, just a smaller or larger footprint of our smaller handy wheels buses that we can still get a ramp out in to help people that are mobility challenged get on. And we have found some of those. So we like to try that when we get available funds to do it. The lifespan is shorter. So those burn diesel, which is neighborhood friendly actually. So just the loudness of them inside of them is improved. But certain things are dictated, but not just you got to buy this bus.
okay, so we could downsize our
Yeah.
fleet.
Yeah, once they were bought, it didn't make sense to get rid of them
Right.
because we don't pay the grant, and you are required to keep them once you buy them to their useful life as specified. And I think that's 12 years on the large buses, which now we've exceeded that, and it's 5 on the handy wheel buses. Those are useful life of estimated to be 5. It's pretty good estimate, really. So we've exceeded that on a lot of those as well.
The limiting factor, though, is the handicap accessibility. It's, they don't make easily accessible buses very small. And so we're trying to find that sweet spot. And, hopefully we can get a few and we can try them out and see if it works.
Yeah, and
That was my
to
next
get real
question.
detailed about it, so these other buses, what we're trying to avoid is if you pull up, say, on your bus stop on the street, whether it's McCarty or Missouri Boulevard, ramp to be able to go down, see, not round out in traffic, get the guy out, have to go around. Now you're holding up traffic for long periods of time, try to get somebody on there. That's has been difficult to find. They are coming up with a solution. Now, electric, people ask me, why don't we have electric buses? Well, very, very much more expensive. We don't have the facilities to maintain them right now. That's part of this study is what will it take to get there. And then, reliability, hills, et cetera, et cetera. So that's not the silver bullet either. Anyway, but it might come at some point, but it's just not here yet.
Councilman Spicer.
What would you say the time frame, like during the day with the hours and stuff, that the buses get used the most?
Well, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but we have the data on who gets on and off and where. And Missouri Boulevard, without question, the most used route.
Like 50%,
It
30%?
just depends on the day and the time of the month. Sometimes when some social service funds are available to folks, they get really heavily in those weeks after, and then kind of tails off, and then it's what you can. And or people do use them, go to work, things like that. Just this week I had again folks, some of the people running factories on the east end of town are wanting to, what it take to get a personal shuttle out here, basically. Make a lot of money from your company probably to pay for it. So, but yeah, we got all that detail.
Any other questions on transit? Matt, before you hit wastewater, I just want to say one thing. Given the amount of time we've already put into this, I want to make sure that we hit police and fire tonight in case there are people here for those budgets who wouldn't normally be here for the other budget presentations generally. So when you finish with wastewater, and I'm not trying to rush you.
No, it's the
I'm
last
just,
slide,
I'm just trying to make everyone else aware so they have a little bit of time to prepare. After this budget, we'll go right into the police presentation and then into fire, just to make everyone aware.
Okay, and yeah, last slide, wastewater. It's actually 3 budgets, but it's all related to wastewater. So we have admin budget, we have a collections budget, which is all the lines that are coming out of everyone's homes and businesses that get down to maybe a pump station finally. Then the pump station to the plant is a different budget. That's our treatment budget essentially. But anyway, it starts on page 325. This bottom line, it looks a little different because it's a little hard to categorize like the other ones, but in wastewater, we generate about $12 million a year. Obviously, with the new rate plan, that's going to change over time, but half of that budget right now almost is debt payments. And it sounds like a lot, but that's a good thing. Keeps our rates low, so we got to do that. Operations is basically the other half, and then you got some minor capital improvements I didn't list in there difference, but basically that's what it is. We have unrestricted fund balance, I think predicted from Margie's work there and Sheila's at, about 12%. And then there are additional restricted funds due to bond covenants and various things out there. Expenses, on this one do vary because of the capital. Haven't been done much capital lately, but with our new hope to keep up on that again. Pink sheets, basically about $465,000 worth of equipment based on that useful life type thing. And standby pay, and similar to what we talked about in street budget, we have 2 of them in this budget. In these budgets, we'd like to see funded on standby pager, basically take the pager home. Major accomplishment. Everybody here should be congratulated. This year we got the rate table in place, so that really sets us on a path. This thing compliant and keep our rates low in the city, which is an advantage. Goal for 2022. So we've been talking about this now that the rates are in place. And how do we have an election for get that bonding authority from the community? That should come up hopefully in 2022, and then hopefully secure some state revolving funds loans. So effective interest rates very low. Bank, I can't remember, less than 1%. So it'd be a big advantage. We're hopeful to get it like a $10 million project that we need to do out of that. It'd save a lot of money for the question.
Any questions about wastewater? Any questions that maybe you were afraid to ask during earlier portions of the Public Works budget that you'd like to ask now? Anybody? Any other questions about Public Works?
I can't hear you.
When are you planning to do the bond issue in 2022?
Well, that's still up for grabs. The council would have to approve that, but I think Ryan has been looking at it, I want to say.
I think we're targeting the March, which is kind of an kind of an odd election cycle, but would be available for this particular type of election.
What
So
election?
it's the off-year presidential primary, which is specifically authorized. It's only available to charter cities and only if we specifically authorize it in our code, which we do.
So we won't just be creating a new, there will already be an election and we won't have our own election.
No, this will likely be the only thing on the ballot.
Oh, okay then.
If it were to be the March election. But of course, that is subject to city council approval.
Any other questions for Mr. Marash? Thank you very much, man. Thanks, Brett. Okay. Chief, police budget.
going to transition our equipment, and have our slides been distributed to the council? Okay. I think there are 13, and we will try to be brief, of course, answer all your questions, but try to go through these as quickly as is reasonable. So if we turn to the first slide, what we were trying to reflect is the kind of, Margie said Monday she gave the sum of the police department budget of the 11,224,000. Okay, but we manage 5 budgets, so this lists those 5 budgets, the amounts of those 5 budgets, and kind of a relativity there. And if one looks at what comprises that 11.6 million, you'll see that the 88% is personnel, which is down a little bit, but that could be a result of increase in contractual obligations and things of that nature as technology kind of takes over our world. We could go to the second page. And what we're indicating here is we're going to focus tonight on the pink sheets. Why? When one looks at the operating budget and excludes personnel, this is what remains. So as you can see there, as the overall budget minus personnel, the difference between last year and our proposed 22 budget is only $5,494 or 49 thousandths of a percent. So excluding personnel, there are just very, very few changes in the line item operating budget. The next slide reflects those pink sheets. They are within 3 of our 5 budgets. They're listed in priority, but it's very difficult for us to actually prioritize these items. We certainly, for instance, if we received a certain number of police vehicles, body-worn in-car cameras might be substituted for one of those 13 cars. So we do the best we can to say, as an overview, how would we rank these? And so we put all 13 vehicles as number 1 because we thought it was misleading to put body-worn cameras as number 14. That's not really reflective of their importance. So we lumped the cars together, the cameras together, and so on. Next, vehicle replacement. That ever-present large sum expense. This year, we requested 13 patrol cars at an estimated cost of $44,416 each. That includes the purchase price and the upfitting of each vehicle. The actual price of the car is estimated to be $36,288, and of course, approximately $8,000 to equip each of those vehicles. The average mileage on those 13 patrol cars next April 1st, we estimate to be, and I will say we're pretty close with our estimates, estimated to be over 125,000 miles. Important to note that our vehicles idle a lot. At almost every scene of any significance, you'll see 1 or more patrol cars sitting there, overhead lights on, flashers, whatever it might be. Of course, the car is idling. As you'll note, the idle time can be computed at 25 miles per 1 hour of idle time. So really, when we talk about 125,000 miles on each car, it's much, much, much higher as far as wear and tear on the engines. Second item is body-worn in-car cameras. I want to introduce Captain Wilde, Eric Wilde, Lieutenant Chad Stieferman, and Bethany Benward, our management analyst, that changed titles. And they were an important part of developing the budget and they have some very particular information that might be of interest. And I've encouraged them to interject at any time they wish if they have something to add, because they know a lot more than I do about a lot of these items. So they're going to hear, and I hope no objection to their participation. So when we look at the body-worn in-car cameras, that means Captain Wilde can explain how a comprehensive look at all of our cameras will be more efficient and more effective. Lieutenant Stieferman did the pricing, and this obviously means if we wanted to do the upfront purchase of those cameras, we estimate about a $496,000 investment, and then the following years, that's $7,850. Or a consistent investment, we could elect to expend $110,000 each of those 5 years. And I think I would defer to Captain Willard to explain why we say body-worn cameras and in-car cameras. And in fact, we could throw the building cameras into the whole system, but it's much more efficient to do it in a comprehensive manner.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it's not necessarily, well, it is more efficient to do so because you're always operating on a same software platform in the background. If you buy in-car cameras and body-worn cameras from different vendors, you're paying additional fees to those vendors for their software platforms, and it just doesn't sync up well. We've identified a vendor that can provide in-car cameras as well as body-worn cameras that operates on one operating system. And by purchasing all of those together in one package, we also get a discounted price. So if we were to parse those out separately, it would be significantly more expensive to take on those items.
So this amount would cover all of the cameras that you have inside the vehicle currently, replacing those, plus the body-worn cameras, just the equipment side.
Just the equipment side and the software. And like I said, all of that software would operate those cameras. They would all be on the same system unless Chad has different. And storage. Storage is always the big issue, whether it's cloud storage or adding server space. I mean, think about 24 hours worth of video going on. That's a lot of storage space that we're going to have to encounter, and this includes that as well.
It does include that. For what period? For a certain period of time, or the hardware that goes into storing?
So what this price gets us is it gets us, we worked with the vendor to give us a storage calculation, because when we were looking at online storage was extremely expensive. So we were able to do, they were able to give us a calculation based on the amount of in-car cameras we had, the amount of body cameras we have, and came up with a amount of terabytes. So this will give us 74 terabytes of storage space, which based on our retention periods, should get us to a plateau range where we should plateau out and be able to have a revolving storage with that. And that's estimated on the whole 5-year contract basis. So with the estimate they did, we shouldn't run out of storage in 5 years. And if we do, with the server platform that we chose to go with, we can expand that storage very easily just by adding hard drives to it if we decide we underestimated and we're producing a lot more video than we anticipated producing. And then once we hit that 7-year mark, with the way the retentions will work, we'll pretty much be at a revolving, we'll be deleting as much, retention will be dropping as much video as we're adding on a daily basis once we hit that 7-year mark.
Is this the same platform that the county is currently using, or is it a totally different? Because the county sheriff's
It'll be
already
the
has the
same.
cameras.
So it'll be the same platform they're using in their cars, but the county has got 2 different platforms for their body worn versus their in-car camera systems. And kind of like Captain Wilde said, our current in-car camera systems pushing 6-7 years old. So we are nickel and diming the parts on that system right now just to keep it running. So to introduce brand new body cameras into that, being the older units, they would not pair well together. So we would lose a lot of functionality with the body worn cameras and the in-car camera systems being able to seamlessly work together as an individual unit. So by replacing them together, we increase that functionality and then refresh that aged in-car camera system we're currently working with.
Didn't know if there might be some cost savings if we we did have the same kind of platforms that the county did. I mean, just right next door, basically. So-
Yeah, I mean, it's the same vendor for the in-car cameras, but it's a different vendor for the body worns.
For
And
that-
what this system also gets us, it also pairs in some digital evidence management storage. So right now, we're burning a lot of CDs for all the digital photography we take. This new platform, and we calculated that into our storage retention also, is we'll be able to upload all of our digital photography that we take into this platform, so it's all saved in one place, and give us the capability to do electronic file transfer with the Cole County Prosecutor's Office. So it'll eliminate the need to burn all the CDs and DVDs that we're currently burning to save 1 or 2 digital pictures from a crime scene.
Great, thank you.
Next, the police information systems. Now, this item will not be necessary if we fund the body cameras or the camera system. Presently, you guys can jump in, but explain to me that I know that when we have our overhead lights on, then the camera, the in-car camera kicks in, or whatever's within that frame. If not, if something isn't there or it's off to the side, then we don't capture it. This allows a continuous recording, correct? At all times, if you want more explicit.
Yeah, so right now, the system that we have is event-based only. So the camera actually has to be triggered to start recording. If we stayed with our old system that we currently have, the adding of these hard drives to the system would allow it to be, it would have based on an hourly time frame. So the more the car is used, the less you can go back. The more the car is used, the retention goes back. But it's a continuous recording. So anytime that car's got the ignitions on, that camera's recording everything that it sees. So if the officer doesn't turn his lights on, or he drives past a block in town, and 30 minutes later, we have a major crime that takes place there, and we can go back and then review the video from his car to see what vehicles were parked on the street and different things at the time he drove through, and maybe get some very good information on the suspects or, who was in the area at the time. Where right now, being event-based recording, we wouldn't be able to go back 30 minutes and pull that. So this would let us go back 24 to 48 hours based on the car usage to be able to go back and pull that critical video if we need be. And if we go with on the slide before, that's included in that new proposal. It's not something that we didn't include in that. So that this is included in that with 24-hour non-event-based recording.
We just wanted to kind of separate it just in case the other cameras were. We feel it's that important. And there have been some critical incidents recently that are not captured. We're not on. So it's a very practical benefit to us. Now, building and grounds, we had Architects Alliance a couple of years ago do a comprehensive study of our building. At that time, our building was 40 years old. We thought that was a legitimate benchmark to conduct such a study. So they had their staff come in and take a look at our building. And as you might imagine, there are a lot of needs in a 40-year-old building that's used 24 hours a day. Captain Wilde was the guider through that process and worked closely with Architects Alliance and Carrie. If he wants to kind of pick it up, I will point to the following page or two indicates real quickly just how bad our situation is within the building. You'll see pictures of our evidence room, which in that first slide there up in the upper right, there are a couple of pictures of portion of the evidence room, and there in the middle, I guess 3, and on the left, another portion. Armory below that. Locker room, bottom right. Following. Okay, SWAT. Next page, closer photos of the locker rooms. Lockers in 1940, 40 years ago, close to 1940. didn't have all the equipment that we have, the tools, things of that nature, and they were naturally much smaller. Also, we would add that at that time when that building was built, we believe there were 72 employees, the police department, and now there are 134 paid employees. A few of those, a half a dozen of those are part-time paid. But, you know, we're getting close to doubling in size in those 42 years. Locker rooms haven't changed. And you see, well, you really can't see the bottom right on that second page, but the shower is kind of a gross situation and needs immediate attention, I think is fair, right, Captain? And so he could maybe add some more particulars.
So knowing that there's not been a funding source identified and the overall tab for the building renovation, we, like the chief mentioned, we've got a couple of things that are pink sheet items that we thought really need to be addressed in future budget considerations, and one being the locker room. We do have, that is essentially every employee's home shower now with the increase of COVID, bloodborne illnesses. We see a lot more people that are showering at the police department as opposed to taking their uniforms home and introducing that into their homes. So the shower itself is starting to leak into the wall. You'll see a lot of rust coming down the wall of the shower, and it's getting in behind. So there's some pretty imminent repairs that have to be made to that. And if you move on to the next slide, the elevator. This elevator is not produced anymore, and we've had several outages with the elevator itself, and they are actually manufacturing parts for it now. Parts are not available for it. So it's just a matter of time before that elevator becomes obsolete for us. Vendor cannot replace it in its current state or fix it in its current state. So it's going to have to be removed or replaced.
I would also note the price indicated for the new elevator is probably high. We discovered that they put a lot of bells and whistles in that price and constructing an elevator for us. It's a unique elevator in that it's a 90-degree angle doors. So it's not one single door. It's not two doors across from one another. It's a door facing one way and 90 degrees is another door. They say that really complicates things, but they can get rid of some of those bells and whistles and reduce that price. So just another note about what would be the eventual expense. Strategic digital marketing. I asked Chief Williams in Springfield for his recruitment plan, and within that recruitment plan is an allocation of $200,000 for a marketing plan. So we were encouraged by that because we had already included that in our proposal. I'll have, again, Captain Woolley explain what he envisions with that money.
So the strategic digital marketing, we have a Facebook page now, we have a website, but you have to be searching for that to come across those and get information about the Jefferson City Police Department. We feel right now, based upon the limited number of applications that we're getting, that we need to be more proactive and get our voice out there, get our department out there, and really market ourselves in a manner that makes people want to come and be a Jefferson City police officer. As you can see in red, our applications have reduced from over 200 applicants annually to about 60 now. And that's prior to even an officer going through the extensive testing process. So we're not getting the numbers we used to. We've gone out to a few firms that would do this marketing campaign for us. It would be an increased social media presence, recruiting videos, doing the entire marketing platform for us, and they all come in at around $60,000.
And we certainly go in depth about our issues with staffing, but we're kind of a critical stage now between injuries, military activations, retirements. We've had a ton of those, and people moving on. Not satisfied anymore with our profession due to a lot of things that are clearly advertised in the media. Don't feel quite as appreciated as we used to, and for a person, they can find something else to do for more money and less hassles. 3 individuals to the nuclear plant in one weekend this month. I believe they were, I'm told, started about 25,000 more than we could pay them. So, you know, I can't blame them, but it's killing us from a staffing standpoint. That's why we're really emphasizing both recruitment and retention. This is the most critical issue law enforcement nationally has faced in maybe my career. And then the true effect won't be seen maybe another 4 or 5 years. Just an example, throw this out here to show the importance of recruitment and retention. New York City estimates to lose 23% of their officers in 2-year period. That's 8,600 officers in 2 years. We're not New York, but it's all relative. And if we lose 10, maybe worse off than New York City. I mean, well, not really, but it's serious for us. And that's those types of statistics, maybe not quite that dramatic, are apparent across the nation, I've read several articles that cite a variety of departments, and they're all losing officers and not able to replace them. 200 a year applicants we used to have consistently, now we're lucky to get 60. Speaks for itself.
Chief, where is staffing now below permitted FTE?
I think we are 8 with Les's retirement. 8. I think we're 8 of 90.
And is that all, that's all police officer and
Yes,
leadership staff?
90 authorized police positions, and we're short. Usually we're 3 or 4.
Thank you.
So we'll move to animal control, and I will fail to mention that Captain Wilde commands the operations division, so he has a particular interest in things that affect those personnel. And Lieutenant Stieferman is second in charge of the support services division. Lieutenant Jeff Stieferman is just interested in the budget process, and he is one of my professional standards officers, so that's why he was whispering in my ear how many vacancies we have, because that's part of his problem. So I'm sorry I didn't kind of put them into context and why they're here. So animal control is a part of the support services division. And the truck, as you can see, has about 112,000 miles on it. It's 15 years old. I think that probably speaks for itself. Now we get into software and the mobile data terminals. Lieutenant Stieferman is a heck of an expert in all those kinds of technology things, so I'm going to turn it over to Chad.
Yeah, all this is we've got mobile data computers in all of our police cars. So this is just trying to get the animal control officers kind of up to the same level of usable technology in their vehicles. This would add 4 mobile data computers into their cars, which would give them our police windows, which are our communication center dispatches for animal control, so they'd be able to see their calls for service inside their trucks as they're responding out. And what pairs with this is we use Shelter Pro as our shelter software down at the animal shelter, and just like any company, they're trying to go cloud-based. So all their new bells and whistles that they're adding to their new software is all, they're focusing all their attention on their cloud-based software, not their standalone installation software. So while they still maintain it, they're no longer enhancing that software. So by the purchasing of the cloud-based Shelter Pro software, and adding the MDTs into the animal shelter trucks, that would then give the ACOs the ability in the field to look up history on animals. Right now, if we pick up a pet in the field and we scan for a microchip and find it, they've either got to drive back to the animal shelter to look up history on the animal to see who the owner is, or they've got to call back to the animal shelter and talk to an ACO or a shelter staff member that is there to have them look it up if one's available, to where if we had this in our vehicles, they would be able to scan it, search that right on the scene, and maybe find out that the animal is 2 houses down from where it
belongs and actually just take the animal home and drop it off with a pet owner, as opposed to bringing it to the animal shelter and utilizing tremendously more resources to get that animal home. It would also give us live adoption updates. Right now, with the current Shelter Pro we have, it only updates the adoptable animals that we display online. Twice a day, I believe, is what that file pushes out to the program we use, where the cloud-based program would be a real live update. So as we're adopting animals and adding animals to the adoption floor, the public would be more notified on a better basis on what our true availability is.
So we moved to the last page, and we kind of lumped all our personnel requests into that one page. It covers two different divisions. Sports Services includes Animal Control and Communications, 911 Center. Operations Division staffs police officers and various assignments. So the two part-time customer service reps at Animal Control, really we thought we would ask for two, and have for several years, asked for two part-time customer service reps. That way we could avoid benefits. It'd be the cheapest way we could go to have two people, like one morning person and one afternoon person, 20 hours a week, one to pay the benefits. And so that was the most economical way to get someone to staff that. Presently, if we don't have a volunteer to fill in, then we have to take like an animal control officer to serve there, to greet people, direct people, answer the phone, do all those kinds of things. And that's not a part of their job description, but it's a necessity because we have no other options. Try to use volunteers regularly. Pretty good at it. We try to monitor their performance so that they do a good job for us. But really, I don't think they volunteer to be a customer service rep, but care about the program, so they do it for us. Moving to 911 operator, I think initially wanted a 21st person maybe 15 years ago. In fact, that's, as I kind of looked at the figures I could find, I believe it was 15 years ago when we last added anybody in the communications center. In that 15 years, of course, we have the advent of the cell phone and those people there. We have 20, so we can't even have 3 teams of 7. They're responsible for about 65,000 calls for service each year. Of course, that doesn't include 10 or 15,000 traffic stops each year. Doesn't include the multiple phone calls we might receive for one incident. So you might have one call for service, but they may take 10 or 12 telephone calls before that scene is calmed and stop calling us to report things. We're not discouraging reporting, but those operators, 3 or 4 that might be working, I don't know how they do it. We don't know how. Snapshot of what they're responsible for, work product now versus 15, 20 years ago, really don't. We're so fortunate to have that kind of committed and dedicated people center. And I encourage any council person and every council person to come and sit with them. I don't think it'll take too long to really get a really sense of how much multitasking they have to do. I think you'd really flavor for the importance of just one more position can make, particularly for the one that's working, that one person short. So, and then the 3 police officers, where would we put them? Probably would be the question. And we have needs everywhere right now, particularly our specialty teams, our traffic unit, our community action team. We're short in services, which are SROs, and then patrol too. I mean, there's no place we could put those 3 officers and they not be needed. So we haven't added, I believe it was 11 years since we added 1 officer, and 16 years ago we added 2 officers. So, and then we also want to remember that we don't serve a community of 43,000 people, but according to the chamber, we serve a community of about 90,000 every day during the day. So we're certainly not overstaffed on one piece of what the national figures are as to how many officers a nation should have. depending upon number of people they serve. So, yeah, it's been a long time since we've added personnel. We'll keep asking, I guess. So, happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Councilmember Wiseman.
Thank you. On page 122, I noticed several equipment, rent, lease, software, license, maintenance agreements, and on 112, there was also an equipment lease. And I was wondering if we could get a breakdown of what we are maintaining for each of those items and what we are, which leases we are continuing.
Yeah, that wouldn't be difficult. We
Okay.
have all of that pretty readily.
Great, thank
I'm
you.
not sure about this moment, but we can get very easily.
I thought that might be a tomorrow response.
Yeah, yeah. Could you cite those pages again so Beth can note them?
Sure, it's just 122 and 112. And so specifically on 122, I'm looking at 523010, 545010, 547020, and 0110. And then on a page 112, I'm looking at 523010. Maybe I was looking at, and that one starts with 320.
I think when we meet with the city administrator, so we'll get that to you tomorrow.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilman Schreiber.
There are 5 of us that are on the council that are on the Public Safety Committee, and all 10 of us as council men and women are responsible for the decisions that are made, and we're responsible for the overall public safety for our community, and that's our number one priority, I think, is public safety. In the last few years, we've discussed many times, some of the council people are no longer with us, and we've got new ones that are with us, but we've discussed officer retention with the police and fire departments. We've discussed the issue of radios, and we've discussed the issue of body cameras and vehicle cameras. As a capital city, we cannot afford not to provide the tools that are needed for public safety of our community, for the officers themselves as well as for the citizens. And as a capital city, as we all know, we have a lot of activity going on here, people that come from all over, not just locally, but from other places as well. So we're all hoping what happens when the election for the public safety tax comes up. But what I would like for all of us to do together as a council is to seriously consider what the number 2 option would be if in fact, for some reason that does not pass. Because I don't think that we can afford not to provide some of these things, particularly the cameras and those other items that have been discussed. And I'm not sliding any other department because I think they're all important, every one of them. But certainly public safety has to be our number 1 priority. And I think we all realize that with some of the events that have occurred in various parts of the country. And we've been very fortunate here in the city of Jefferson. We've got wonderful citizens and wonderful employees. But I'm just going to make this comment once, and then I won't make it anymore. But please consider what's been presented here and what is being presented with regard to public safety, because we can't afford to say, okay, well, we'll look at it again next year, because prices will only get higher. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Schreiber.
If I could segue on that to next year, I failed to mention, we can project the need for vehicles based on mileage alone. And we talked to Sean in Central Maintenance, and he says, absolutely, mileage is a great indicator of the wear and tear and need to replace cars. So when we say mileage, it's not a simplistic look. It's an accurate depiction of the wear and tear and need to replacement. But I wanted to say that we project that next year we will add 9 cars to our needs list. So very simply, we asked for 13. subtract however many cars, if any, are actually authorized, and add 9 to that remaining number, and that will be our request next year. I just wanted to indicate that. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments?
Chief, has on the SROs, when has that been last revisited as far as the cost sharing of those positions for our school resource officers?
Well, one might say, every year. I mean, we know what the share is, and, so in the back of our mind, say, is that fair? And what kind of relationship does it generate between ourselves and the school district? I had a meeting with Dr. Linthicum Tuesday, discussed some things that, for instance, whether we could fully staff that program, at least for the first half of the school semester, and some other ideas as far as maybe minimizing our presence at events that aren't necessarily, don't feel we're required to be there, is in total agreement with all of that. I think the important thing to remember is for 25% of the year, we have those officers assigned to field duties around the city. So it's not, when we say it's a 50-50 split, that's true, but 25% of the year, they're all ours. Also, it's important to note that there are a lot of calls for service on those school campuses, and it's those SROs that are taking those calls. If they weren't in the school, we'd be assigning zone officers to respond to those schools, interview, write the reports, investigate the case. And so there's a tremendous economic value to us and our field units to have those officers on campus. And it's not so obvious unless one knows how many calls we receive for a variety of reasons. Not so many violent, but they could be, and then right down to theft and just you name it. So we feel, if the implication is it a fair break? I think it is, really, when one considers the totality of what we receive, what the school system receives. I like it.
Okay. And just a follow-up question, as far as with the LU Police Academy, I'm hoping that'll aid us in recruitment in the future. I know it's still early on its
Yeah,
online.
they're getting their feet on the ground right now. So
But I hope we can make inroads with that as a recruitment tool.
we're aware of that possibility.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Owner Wiseman.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Mueller, do you have those forfeiture and seizure numbers? I asked for those last year, and I think I asked for those last year, and you provided those, and I was wondering if you had those this year. I don't know if you have them on hand or if you had to look at.
I'm not real sure what you're requesting.
There were I believe some forfeitures and seizure funds that the police have.
Oh,
and-
there is a
and
separate
an animal-
fund. I don't have that information with me. I don't
And an
know.
animal
We can get
control
it.
fund. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
I also think too, is if there's different departments that are using our police department too, it should come out of their fund and not the police department's fund. They only have so much money in their, in their budget, their stuff. And I think if there's different departments that's utilizing our police department, overtime and stuff, they should be paying for that, not the police department. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? We certainly appreciate all of the police staff who are here tonight. Thank you for coming and being present. We also, of course, appreciate the presentations by Captain Wilde, Lieutenant Stieferman, and Chief Schrader. Thank you all very much. Chief Schofield. Fire Department budget.
Just a little bit of time to get set up here, but my thought would be that we go through a streamlined presentation, try to leave a little bit of time for some questions. I thought we would start with the book that you have in front of you, or the budget book, and I would use those page numbers to reference various things. So let's just make sure that I'm in the right spot and everybody can follow along. So performance measures for us start on the budget book, page 78. Is everybody on the same page, so we're synced up? And I won't spend too much time on performance measures. I know that in the past, that's been an area of interest of the council, and I won't spend too much time unless there's questions. But I would mention just one thing in particular there that I think is pretty important, and that is the ISO rating that went down in 2020, and that's just something that we are constantly looking at and making sure that we not only maintain, but that we also make, wherever we can, improvements in our ISO rating. Does have a direct impact on insurance rates, especially for commercial occupancies, but also for homeowners and homeowner insurance rates. So that's a pretty comprehensive review of our entire operation, as well as water infrastructure and communications, which involves obviously the 911 center. So I just wanted to make sure I brought that to your attention. That was in 2020. We received that letter November 1st, 2020 for that decrease in rating, which was an increase in score. So we went from a 3 to a 2, which was a pretty substantial improvement for the fire department and for the community. Any questions on any other of the performance measures before we move on into budget stuff? Okay, if not, then the operating budget, which I say on mine, it looks like is 181. I think is pretty straightforward, pretty streamlined, no real major changes or adjustments there. But I am happy to answer any questions if anybody has any on the operating line items.
Any questions? Councilman Spencer.
Chief, I've noticed, and it seems to be kind of a constant theme in other departments too, but within the workers' compensation line item, director requested 191, but administrator and mayor approved budget would be 153. That's a big number there.
Yeah, that would be something that I think would probably better addressed by
Yeah,
Margie, as
thank
far as we have very little influence over the set rates and numbers in the personnel services categories. Do you want to address that?
So the finance department basically controls the personal services section for each of the departments through pulling information from our Springbrook payroll software system to get salaries and the benefits and so on. And as you may know, that we are self-insured for workers' comp. We have a workers' comp fund. We brought bills to the council for supplementals because that fund has been depleted. So initially with the first round of the budget that we prepared for the city administrator's review, I had increased the amount of workers' comp being charged to each department to fund the workers' comp fund. And with discussions with the city administrator, he put it back to the 400,000 that was the normal. I had increased it. So hopefully, that fund will be self-sustaining, but that's the reason there. The department director, actually, that request is generated by finance.
One other thing I might draw attention to that you may have noticed in those line items, if you go down to the category that talks about professional services, this is a change from last year into this year, and the primary cause for that change was we went out. Traditionally, we have always had the same medical director as Cole County EMS, and that there was a change late last year that happened pretty quickly. And they made a change with their medical director, and also then correspondingly also made a change. There's an advantage to being under the same medical direction. Physician guidance is probably the best way to describe that for what we do. And so in the process there, we transitioned to the University of Missouri hospital system, and they have kind of a group of medical directors that actually provides similar services for a lot of counties and cities in our region. And so we also solicited their services along with Cole County First Responders and Cole County EMS. And so what you see there is more funding in that category, and that is probably appropriate for what we actually are doing now. We're trying to have more coordination meetings with a medical director involved with that, not only in decisions about protocols, procedures, but also emergency medical dispatch. We involve the police department in those conversations, as well as the SWAT medic program, and they also provide some funding to this as well. So the cost is more, and it's probably appropriately more for the services that we're receiving, but it is a little bit more of a significant change from what we've done in the past. Very limited oversight from the medical director. So just wanted to highlight that as something you probably picked up on. Are there any other questions with line items within the operating budget?
Yeah, I noticed on salaries, it doesn't seem to come up to the 3% that increase. Is there an explanation about that?
I think there's a number of reasons, and Marge can probably address that as well as I could. You know, as we have more senior folks retire or leave and replace them, you know, potentially with newer employees, you know, there really is only one way into the fire department, and that is, you know, at the entry level as a firefighter that starts off brand new. But it also is part, I think, of a broader conversation, and you know, tonight may not be the time for that, but I think as far as our struggle with not only recruiting but also retention is we are losing people to smaller municipalities and bigger communities, St. Louis County, around Kansas City area, also Columbia. But it's very difficult to be competitive with those organizations. They not only provide great entry level pay, some of them really, really great entry-level pay, but then they also have many more steps in their career ladder. So that helps with a lot of their retention process. And so I know that the pay conversation is one that I know that the police have had for many years, and we have as well. It is continuing to get harder and harder. We also have seen our numbers in our candidate list go down pretty significantly. So for us, it's not what it once was. You know, we also were able to produce a candidate list with 100, 200 or more people on them historically. And we're not seeing those numbers like we used to. And I don't know if there's, you know, a desire to have a deeper conversation with that, but we're happy to do that at any time too.
Yeah, thank you. I understand, and yeah, it basically points out we're getting a less experienced workforce, which is not helping.
No, agreed.
Any other questions at this point? Chief?
Okay, so with that, we'll just briefly talk about the fire museum budget and the operating line items, and that is purely a utilities and maintenance, very minor maintenance dollar amount there, just to kind of keep the lights on and the water on. Occasionally, we'll do a little bit of just very, very minor repair. Placed a hot water heater last year. Those funds, but that's really just to kind of do the very basic maintenance required for that facility down at 911 East Miller Street. Okay, if it's at everyone's pleasure, we'll continue on with the pink sheet list. And I'll just mention a few things there. You know, we assemble this budget and give it to the city administrator, and then there's a process, as you all know, that's been a few months. And so some things have kind of changed a little bit. There's been some updates, and I'm going to provide those for you first. We're always seeking creative funding solutions for various projects. Sometimes those are successful, and many times they're kind of a long shot, but we still pursue those things. So some of the grant funding things I'll just run through real quick. The ballistic protection the NFPA 3000 ballistic protection is a need for us because we many times get into situations where we are dealing with incomplete information and we're responding to volatile or potentially dangerous, violent situations. A good example would be when we were tasked with fire suppression at the governor's mansion during a protest. It extended water lines and had one of our small brush trucks in place so that if people were to try to light things on fire, we could suppress that quickly. Now, to do that, we had to be kind of in the hot or warm zone, obviously with law enforcement protection, but we were still, I would consider us very much to be in the line of fire. So we made the request then of, does anybody have ballistic helmets and body armor for us to utilize for that purpose? And really there wasn't a good source for that outside of law enforcement circles. And so this request has been around for a few years. And so we put that in as an RSOC, which is a Regional Homeland Security grant for regional funding. We did receive $5,000 with the hope that there might be remainder funds in 2022 to help us with the remainder. So we got seed money for that, but we didn't get the rest of it yet. So that's just kind of an update on that one. And then number 5, the fire hose replacement. That was a federal FEMA AFG Assistance to Firefighters grant. That one was rejected. So the $100,000 for that replacement hose was rejected. So that one is not viable for 2022. And our hose is one of those things that has a service life. We try to replace it within the service life that's recommended by the manufacturer. One other grant funding thing I just want to mention, and I don't want it to appear like it's low priority because it is number 13, but it is one of those things that, they're all very important, and it just happens to be that the unlucky topic at the very end of the priority numbers, which is a crash truck for the airport. And some of you may be aware that we have an airport crash truck. It was a hand-me-down from the city of Columbia. It's about 30 years old and well beyond its service life. So we provide all the fire suppression for the airport. And, they'll tell you it's a very busy airport, lots going on down there, a lot of state traffic, a lot of military airframes, a lot of private, very busy with takeoffs and landings. So we provide the service and the personnel, but what we don't really have is an apparatus that is appropriate for the function at this time that's within its service life. So we are also trying to seek some creative grant funding there, potentially even a public-private partnership. That is something that we are hopeful for in the future, because we understand that a big ticket item like that is going to be very difficult to fund through a budget process like this one. But we are hopeful that maybe with some of the infrastructure money coming down through the federal government, might be able to do that, or at least partially fund that. So we did reach out and had a good meeting earlier in the summer, late spring, in which we invited a lot of the stakeholders, being state government. Callaway County, obviously, is a stakeholder over there, as well as some of our local officials. I know the mayor was in attendance, as well as Councilman Schreiber. And so we're optimistic that maybe creatively we can figure something out to replace that piece of apparatus as well. Kind of circling back then to other pink sheet items, personnel. We talk about our 2 ladder trucks that we have in service. That's the number 1 priority. We talk about trying to bring up the minimum staffing. Typically, we say that every fire truck at minimum has three individuals assigned to it. That is not the case with the 2 ladder trucks. When we are at minimum staffing, like we are today, only have 2 on that truck, a captain and a driver. To really make that truck function the way that it is designed to be effective, especially in a suppression environment, it really needs 3. So that's why there is that ask. That would provide 2 personnel for each shift, so a total of 6, but they would also raise that minimum staffing by 2 for that particular line item. We feel like that is how they should be staffed. That would also help us in our ISO points, our ISO score. That's one of the remainder areas that still has potential for us to gain more points, is for us to have more personnel assigned on a daily basis. The number 2 item there is the Hyde Park burn building replacement. This is something that has been a pink sheet item for many years. Back in 2017, we had an engineer, a structural engineer, come look at the building and evaluate it and said it is structurally unsound. We have done some repairs that we could over the last 30 years, but you can imagine whenever you expose a structure to that amount of heat, water, freezing, thawing cycles, it's really difficult to maintain the structural integrity of a building like that. The burn room and the drill tower connected together. So it does have major issues, and something needs to occur there so that we can have a live burn facility. We have constructed a steel containers that kind of were a stopgap that allowed us to still get those ISO points in the last evaluation, but we were told at that time that that was only to really serve as a stopgap. That was not a burn building, a permanent burn building. So we have been able to do live burns in a very limited, not in the ideal scenario, have continued to do live burns to maintain proficiency in that area. But that is one of our major concerns. Was there?
Sorry, I had a question.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, feel free to stop me anytime. I'm just on a roll, so.
My recollection is this was significantly lower dollar estimate even like last year.
You're right. It was. And as we look at that, there's a lot of options of what could be done to address this issue. And there's everything from repair the existing. What I mean by that is we'd have to demolish the burn building, and then attach that to the drill tower, to building an all-new facility, to constructing a more sophisticated one out of steel containers. And that is an option. And that's really kind of what we had thought might be the best choice, the most economically feasible, was to do one out of more steel containers, a multi-level steel container building. We've watched other organizations do that recently, last few years, since the time that request has been made. And we've watched how that's been deployed and how effective it's been. And our assessment is that would work for a limited amount of time. That would buy us 5 to 10 years of live burns. Our desire and what this number represents is we want to construct a facility that takes us into the next 30 years. So certainly we could do something to the tune, I think the previous number was a, 5 to 600,000. I think the question really for you would be, and to the council would be, is, we have a range of solutions, and what is the ideal funding, the ideal outcome that we're looking for? Is it a 5 to 10 year facility? Is it a 20 to 30 year facility? Certainly happy to explore all those options.
Thank you.
Yep. I think I don't think there's anything else on here that is new. They've all been previous requests from previous years in pink sheet items. The part-time office support right now for our entire department of 75 uniformed folks. We have one admin assistant. She's amazing. She does a great job. It's very challenging, the pace and the tempo, I would say. It's difficult for her to keep up, and there's no backup for her if ever she's off for any reason. So we would like to have a part-time person that could fill in and also kind of share some of that workload. Other things in there, one of the questions is always about our apparatus fleet plan for the frontline fleet. Talk about making those investments for the future if we wanted to pay in advance or to try to pay cash for apparatus. That's why I always include an annual investment of a certain dollar amount that could be utilized for that purpose, to purchase apparatus, not take out a loan essentially every 10 years to do so. Are there any other questions maybe with any other vehicles or positions or any of the pink sheet items that we want to take a closer look at? happy to do that.
Questions? Councilman Schreiber.
It certainly didn't help our cause. I think we lost fire school in 2017, 2018, and that was about the same time we had to close the burn building. So that's fundamental piece that a fire school would need is a functioning burn facility. So I'm not going to say that that was the only factor, because that probably wouldn't be fair, but it didn't help our cause to keep the fire school here. One of the things that we always would look to for a big purchase like that is AFG, the Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program, and they do not fund permanent structures like that. So they have flat out said that does not count, that will not be utilized. When we did approach some of the various surrounding departments, there was not an interest to do a cost share that would be on our property. We did pursue that as an option. And that's one thing to mention. The facility grounds is very well equipped. We have pretty good security and access and a great apron paved area to maneuver on. We have a good building that's been built. We have great water supply. So we have all the components we need, but we're just missing that very core, most important piece, which is the actual burn facility. That's what we're missing. I do think there's an opportunity to, if we built a good building there, I think there's certainly an opportunity when people did say they wanted to come use it, there's probably an opportunity to use that and say, well, there might be some cost sharing for that. Appropriate.
Any other questions or comments? Chief Schofield. Any other comments, Chief?
No, I don't think so. I will mention also, I know that it came up in the police presentation. We were at our last public safety meeting last month. We were fully staffed. And like I said, since that time, we have lost two additional for retirement, one with 15 years and one with almost 20 years.
For that. Okay, well, thank you very much, Chief. These meetings, these first two department presentation meetings are advertised as fairly long. I think if we take a 5-minute break, we can pound through the rest of tonight's agenda. Be all right. So it is, call it 7:20 right now. Let's reconvene at 7:25 and finish out the administration department budgets. Sounds like you're quoting it. Okay, let's go ahead and reconvene. And, all right, Mr. Crowell, you want to get rolling on mayor council budget? Please.
pull that microphone over too much more, but there really aren't any changes to mayor and city council. We added 2 new council people. Just kidding, we didn't do that. The total is $136,695.28. No real increases. One of the pink sheet items is just the cost for health insurance and dental insurance for council people. If you're interested, we had that number put in. So typically we get some questions for that. So we wanted to make sure we had that information in there for you. And I didn't have anything else if you didn't have any other questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Nope. Let's see, city clerk, Ms. Donaldson.
There aren't really many changes to the last year's budget. The biggest line items are probably for the elections, which is a straightforward cost that we get from the county. And then also the maintenance agreement, which is our MuniCode program, the software and the maintenance of the website. I did have one pink sheet, and that was for a digital posting board for the hallway, just that you can post to from your desk in case, you have to work from home or you're out of the office, you can still manage the agenda postings. And then I had another pink sheet idea, listening to police, is if they go to that body cam, the sunshine requests are gonna probably go up. So there's probably gonna be like more cloud storage for those records and staff to review them. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Back to Mr. Crowell, city administrator budget.
No significant increases in city administrator budget, excluding the salaries. There was, I think, a minor increase in maintenance agreements, and there are not any capital requests.
Any questions on this budget? You, Mr. Molman, city attorney budget.
Thank you. This budget is fairly consistent with last year's budget, slight increase in personnel due to some personnel changes. So some increased salaries there, but all in all, fairly consistent with previous years, and no pink sheets for the city attorney's budget. I'd be happy to answer any questions though.
Any questions on the city attorney budget?
So just it looks like you're expecting to be a lot busier from page 45.
Turn it off there. Yeah, I think part of that is, so can I ask the context of that question? Because if you take a look at the 2020, like just for number 3, 2020 contracts reviewed, that's 321 as opposed to 2022, 320. The 2021 number was as of April 30th. Is there anything in particular that I can address?
Well, no, I was just looking more at the ordinance resolutions drafted and workers' compensation stuff. And
sure.
a
So
lot of those numbers, they're 2 and 3 times.
Right. So we have seen an increase in litigation matters that we're handling. Most of those are handled through our insurance company. But that does still take some significant in-house time to manage those and, coordinate discovery for outside counsel. Those come in waves, and I'm not going to predict a decrease in the wave, but as opposed to a continuation. And so I think that's part of it. And also, we were not as busy in both the kind of litigation and then in the sheer number of ordinances that we were doing as part of the COVID year. I think those affected our attention were directed elsewhere. And thankfully the litigation kind of new cases and the amount of ordinances that we did reflected that as well.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Molman, the municipal court budget, please.
Thank you. The municipal court budget. Let's get over here. Municipal court budget, also very similar to previous years. And in fact, I would say it's almost identical to previous years without too many changes. We did introduce a new municipal judge this fiscal year. The Honorable Scott Evans became municipal judge back in April, and that's been going well. We've been able to reduce the amount of the temporary judge due to the previous situation of Judge Stumpy moving from the prosecutor to the municipal judge. That involved a lot of conflicts, and so that required a lot of use of the temporary municipal judge. That has reduced. It hasn't gone away, but it has been reduced. So that is one reduction that I think we got the first hit of last year, but are finally seeing hopefully the tail of that this year, and hopefully we can continue to use that in future year budgets. I do want to address one pink sheet item that the municipal court has, and is a Polycom system for the municipal court jail dockets. And so minimum court operating standards require that the municipal judge be able to do hearings with people that are in the county jail. And we do not have that capability right now. And so essentially what we have to do is, because we do not have the ability to do a jail docket, we have to essentially authorize those people in the county jail to just get released. And then we have to chase them with warrants to show up for municipal court. So it's a lot more efficient to do the jail docket hearings when those people are not going anywhere in the county jail. And so we can have the jail dockets and get them appropriately arraigned and prosecuted as it may be, in the municipal court, because oftentimes someone that's in the county jail or, county offenses also have some underlying municipal issues as well. That's a $3,000 system. That is the only system that's approved by OSCA. I have begged, pleaded, and cajoled that we could use a simpler type of technology, like something like Zoom or simple as FaceTime, but this particular technology has to be approved by OSCA, and this is the only system. So we are currently meeting the minimum court operating standards by not holding people longer than 48 hours without a hearing. We could be a lot more efficient and spend a lot less time issuing warrants and having police officers having to keep track of and serve warrants for non-appearances in the municipal court if we are able to address them while they're in the jail docket. But that should cover it both for city attorney and municipal court. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any final questions for Mr. Molman? On reward.
Not sure. I don't think it is, but I'd be happy to inquire.
Thank you very much. Oh,
I know I've probably asked this question before, so I apologize. It's been a year after year that I ask, but is there an opportunity to just run a jail docket from a courtroom at the courthouse for 30 minutes at like 8:30 a.m. on a Monday morning or something like that? Is that something that's feasible and potentially cheaper?
I would love to inquire. Get you back an answer.
Awesome.
Thanks.
thank you very much. Ms. Strope, the Human Resources Budget.
Thank you.
I'm going to jump right into kind of what does the budget look like for the Human Resources Department. Essentially, our budget this year is pretty much identical to last year. The only big change that you might see is under maintenance agreements. That has gone up quite a bit, and that is because a couple of our software programs that we utilize, applicant tracking and onboarding, historically have been in the IT budget, and they were just transferred over to the resources budget. So our total budget is just almost $351,000. That includes 3 full-time employees and 1 part-time employee. Like pretty much all of the departments, by far the majority is personnel services at 89%. We also have about 8% of our budget is citywide services, which includes things like special events, wellness, the software that I just mentioned, training, background checks, human relations commission budget, et cetera. And then the remaining 3% is operations for the resources department itself. Looking at our pink sheets, you're going to see that we have quite a few pink sheets for our small department. And I think part of that is a reflection of the ongoing tight budgets that we've had for a number of years. But I'll go ahead and kind of talk through each of them. The first one, the first highest priority is the electronic employee file system. I'm actually kind of a little bit embarrassed to say we still have paper personnel files. We've really have wanted to digitize those for years, but recent events in the last few years have really shed light on the critical need to do so. If you think about the tornado that went just past our windows, that could have destroyed all of our personnel files. And then also the pandemic with all of our employees and human resources working from home, anytime they needed something from a personnel file, the staff would have to call me. I would pull the file, give them the information they needed. If all of that were digitized, they would have been able to continue their work from their work site at home and get that done. So a couple of things that really are good signs of the importance of an electronic employee file system. Our second priority is an e-learning management system, and that is an electronic training program, essentially. This has been a request of ours for a number of years. The pandemic, again, kind of proved the importance of that. We have not had any type of citywide training now in well over a year and a half or longer. If we had had an electronic training program during the pandemic, all of our employees would have been able to continue with getting some of the training that's needed on a regular basis. A training program like this is a citywide training program, and it would include many, many topics like customer service, safety, supervisory skills, diversity and inclusion, sexual harassment, employment law, environmental compliance, and just general job-related and job-specific training. So there are a lot of systems out there, and there's a lot of training available electronically. So a system like this would allow us to be able to assign training to employees and have them take it at the times that work best for them during the workday. The next item is an employment marketing awareness campaign. This is very much what the police department also presented. This is designed to increase public familiarity with our organization by targeting our ideal applicants with the right message at the right time. In this program, we would partner with an advertising or a media company and give us the ability to brand the city and the community as a great place to work, live, and or volunteer. So it would be like a year-round awareness with the ability to target specific things like specific job openings, volunteer opportunities, upcoming and ongoing projects, city services. It would allow for transparency. So as we have openings in specific departments, we could target those, but it would be sending a message out regularly on social media and that allow us to change it as needed. So the one thing that well, I mean, I think that would be, I think they're the same programs. I think that they would be targeting only the department. But I mean, what you're doing with this program is you're creating messages, and you're saying for the next 2 weeks, this is the message that every time somebody goes onto this social media platform, they're going to get this sent to them. So we would be focusing citywide. So I think the one thing that I did hear them talk about in theirs that is not priced in this is videos. So they were, I think, wanting together some specific videos, and maybe those might be. So, that would be something that they could do, or any department could do, or we could do citywide. That is not included in cost estimates. The next one is a health insurance fund appropriation. So I think you all know that we're self-funded on our health insurance plan for our city employees and their families. We have had some incredibly high claims the past 3 years, and unfortunately our reserves have been depleted. So by putting in a lump sum into that would allow us to build those reserves back up and assist with maintaining premiums over time and offer some stability to that program. The electronic performance appraisals, that is another citywide process that is still a paper process. That's something we'd really like to modernize. It would make the process faster, more accurate, and support a paper system. Next one is a deferred compensation match. So for those of you who have been on the council for a while, you know that I've had this as a pink sheet item, I think probably for about 20 years now, but this is basically the opportunity for us to match up to 25, the recommendation is for up to $25 a month for our employees that participate in deferred compensation plans. We have 2 plans available to employees that they can participate in. I feel that it's really a relatively inexpensive benefit for the city to provide, but that has very long-term lasting benefits to the employees. It helps them in saving for their future. It's also very much a strong recruitment and retention tool to offer a benefit. The next one is the Juneteenth holiday. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Everybody knows that in June of this year, the federal government declared Juneteenth a federal holiday. So lots of discussion everywhere about that being a holiday. That was going to be a holiday for city employees, as it was for the federal government and for the state of Missouri. So that gives us the opportunity to talk about that.
I'm just curious, are there other federal holidays that city employees don't get off?
There's a number of them, not a lot, but I know there's Columbus Day, there's the 2 President's Days. Ones I can think of offhand. The next one is a citywide internship program. This is kind of a robust citywide program that we have funded off and on over the years, really primarily dependent upon the budget. It gives us the opportunity to market ourselves to prospective employees while also supporting and attracting young adults to our community. The next one is a human resources assistant position. Benchmarking shows that we should have 5 full-time employees within our department to serve with the responsibilities that we are tasked with. As we mentioned earlier, we have 3.5. If we were to add this position, this employee would be dedicated to recruiting and retention efforts within the city, including training, affirmative action, onboarding, and employee morale programs. And then the final one, and this is, a lot of this is meant to be kind of educational, why this was included in the sheet item, because I know that it's a very large number. But this is a lump sum payment to loggers for our police and fire funds within loggers. So as of November, we'll be paying 19% of the police employees' payroll every pay period for their loggers benefit, and for the fire department, 49%. So providing a lump sum payment into those funds would assist in slowly lowering those payments each pay period. The $2.3 million would lower the police liability by about 1% every pay period, and fire by only about 0.3% right now because of the unfunded liability we have within the fire fund. But in addition to that, with the return on investment that loggers sees every year on their investments, this would assist in lowering the liability even quicker over time. So this is admittedly a very high cost for a low benefit immediately, but over time would benefit the organization tremendously by lowering those overall costs. And just in case this isn't really making a lot of sense to anybody, I'll just give you kind of a example that might help. But if you have a house payment, you have a loan for your home that's pretty high, right? If you were to go in and make a $10,000 or $20,000 lump payment to your premium, right? It's not going to help you this year or next year at all. Maybe you have a 20-year loan, but 15 years from now, you're going to reap huge benefits to that, right? And you're going to have a lot more money to spend. And that's exactly what this theory is that the sooner we can get that 19% and that 49% paid down, the sooner we're going to have more flexibility in our budget. So. Exactly. Exactly. So, right. So this is only for the current loggers plan. Is my recommendation is to pay into that, not to pay into the closed one. And yeah, Councilman Spencer's right in that the reason the fires is so high is because we just switched to loggers. Something like that.
There's been various phases of transitioning firefighters, historical pension fund and private fund to the loggers. And through those phases, there's a long history, and we could probably talk for quite a few hours on that. But it carried with it unfunded liability from the city's end, not from the firefighters themselves, and contributions that were not made. That liability carried forward into a more physically sound, I guess is probably the best way to say it, global pan. And it's probably also important to mention, one distinction that everybody kind of needs to remember is that not allowed to be in Social Security. That's a big, not only do we not contribute, but nor does the city contribute to Social Security. So it's a different version, a different tier of the loggers plan. And I think that's probably an important note, but yeah, I guess we can get as deep as you want. I mean, we can have that conversation if there's.
My only focus is that there was some clarification of understanding of why there was such a big difference between police and fire, and I think some of that has been answered. But that's a big number that's been presented to us tonight, and I hope that's not something. I mean, I think we are contributing the amount for our current loggers program with our current active. Correct. I mean, we're
absolutely we're required to
right, that's
pay
part,
what is necessary to keep it fluid. So yeah. So please don't think that we're not paying what we should be paying or whatever. It's just that we're having to pay 49% in order to offer that benefit, and that's because that plan we haven't had firefighters in loggers for a long period of time, like we have the general employees, employees. So. And this is something we knew when we switched over to loggers. So it's not any big surprise. It's not that anything's been done wrong or anything like that. It's just that thought is if we want to make an impact at some point down the road, try to lower some of our personnel costs, this is something that could do it long term. It is not going to take care of it immediately.
Thank you very much. Anything else on your budget, Ms. Rowe?
On the Juneteenth holiday, explain how it's an extra cost.
So primarily it's an extra cost because in our departments, about half of our workforce work 24-hour shifts. And so when they work 24-hour shifts, they still have to work those shifts. So when a holiday happens, they get paid for that holiday, but they still have to work, so they still get paid for working. So some areas, like the administrative departments, we don't come to work. So there's really not a cost in those areas, because we either get paid through holiday pay or get paid through regular wages, right? But in those departments that are 24-hour shifts where they still have to work regardless of the holiday, that's where that additional cost comes from.
So, okay, so yeah, since it's a holiday and they're working, they get paid more than it's a regular. Okay,
Exactly.
I understand that.
Yep. So then just to mention real quick, our goals, improve training and education of our workforce, improve performance of city employees, and continue development of a health and wellness program. Our performance measures really have stayed very, very steady over the last few years. Turnover, the usage for our employee assistance program, the number of job postings, number of applications, our wellness outreach efforts, all of those have been very steady. That's all I have. I'd be happy to address questions.
Thank you very much. Any final questions for Ms. Stroke? Oh, thank you very much. All right, Ms. Mueller is going to close us out here.
So finance starts on page 76. Only a couple of things have changed from the current budget. Our personnel services salaries has actually decreased, and mainly that's a couple of long-term employees retired, so their replacements were at a much lower salary. And then further down the page, the audit expense is reflected there for the general funds portion of the annual audit that we have with our external auditors. And that has a rate increase built in for the contract period. That's pretty much it for finance. We have one pink sheet item. It's for an e-procurement and contract management system for our purchasing department. I won't read the pink sheet. I think we've had it in for the last couple of years. If it's okay, I'll move on to non-departmental.
Any questions about the finance budget?
So on non-departmental, the only thing I wanted to point out was, and this is on page 85, there was a pink sheet for a safety awards program, and it was funded, and that's the $6,000 that you see there in the upper part of the page. The only other thing to note is that our general insurance line increases, and that's based on quotes we've gotten or anticipated increases in our insurance policies. And that's the general funds insurance policies. So it's many departments, it's paid from here. Other than that, there hasn't been a lot of changes in the non-departmental budget. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions on this budget?
It's just, guess on the impact station, the 8,000, that's for the trailer right now?
It
So-
is.
Okey doke. Last but not least. IT.
Information technology services, the operational lines start on page 95. Not a lot of changes in this budget either. We've got some extra money for tuition reimbursement for one of our support specialists to attend some database classes. And there's some changes in the internet. There's an increase of about 3,000 to upgrade our city internet from a 500 megabyte line to a 1 gigabyte line. And on the next page, there's some increases in the software license and maintenance. There's quite a few things that are paid from this line item that have incremental changes, but a large change on that was the Microsoft Exchange Online is about 18,000 of it, and then the WebEx about 3,000, and some V maintenance, which is some cybersecurity issues of 8,000. There is one pink sheet item in the IT budget. It's for the door access system for City Hall, fire stations, police buildings, meeting court, and animal shelter. We do have a door access system currently, but it is older and it's getting harder to get parts for it and have people work on it. So be happy to answer any questions.
Questions on the IT budget? Thank you very much. Thanks for everyone's commitment tonight and dedication to getting through more than the first half. We actually got some bonus presentations tonight, and we'll be a little bit ahead next time. So let's go ahead and we'll hold agenda item 4 for the end of next Thursday's meeting. So next Thursday will be Planning and Protective Services, Parks and Miscellaneous. So we're in good shape, and then we can, if time permits, begin some discussion at the end of next Thursday's meeting. We'll be here. The next budget meeting will be next Thursday evening at 5:30 p.m. in this room. Thanks, everybody.